Segment number one is really the ACC weekend update. I kind of wanted to do around the ACC and start us off with kind of the biggest news of the weekend or of yesterday, or really of this morning, I think. Jarren Williams comes in and he beats up on the Florida State Seminoles, but then turn around, Willie Taggart gets fired from his position. Let me tell you a little bit about the game before we talk about Willie. Jarren Williams went 21 for 27, 313 yards and 2 touchdowns. Miami's Greg Rousseau, man, he had a monster night. 8 tackles, 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss. Really, it kind of all boils back down to that Florida State offensive line just hasn't been able to get it together. Cam Akers tried his best to do what he could. He had 22 carries that night, but Florida State lost 51 yards to sacks alone, which is just horrible. And it ended up being Willie Taggart's final game. 0-5 in rivalry games, losing 4 games, some of those to Clemson by double digits. Well, most of those to Clemson by double digits. And Taggart was 9-12 overall, 6-9 in the ACC. Not a very good record. But the concern that I have and that I wanted to talk with you about, Al, is that he's only been around for a year and a half. So do you think that firing him was the right move, being it so early?
Well, we actually kind of talked about this several shows ago. I talked about Tennessee and Jeremy Pruitt maybe not sticking around for too long, even though he just got there almost. It's the kind of Clemson, or it's the kind of football, I guess, college football culture we're in today. It's what have you done for me lately? I want to win, and I want to win now. Even when you're taking over a wreck that was, Florida State, and they were not in good shape. And again, you saw times where there actually looked like there was some improvement, and then there was other times where they just looked like a bigger dumpster fire than they were before. And I think that's kind of where the main gripe was with Taggart. Obviously, his seat has been hot for a while, which is crazy, like you said, for the fact that he just got here. I mean, this is under 2 years that he's been there, but the offensive line didn't do anything to help itself. Bryles, kind of schemed around it as best he could, but it just wasn't enough. Plain and simple, when they lost to the Hurricanes, and who's a team that's been really up and down this year. Obviously, it was seemed to be the final straw. A $17 million buyout, I believe it was. That's a really high amount. It's a lot of money to have to pay to get rid of somebody. I'm not going to say it was the right move. I'm not going to say it was the wrong one either. I think they could have done better than Taggart a couple years ago, and I think they'll make a bigger splash at head coach this year. So, I mean, as far as leading candidates, I mean, obviously you hear a lot of names being floated around here, including our very own Jeff Scott, which I hate hearing. I don't want any part of Jeff Scott going to Florida State. But I mean, you hear a lot of Stoops talk, and I'm guessing those are some of the bigger names. You hear Mike Leach on the local radio and everything. Has anything been broken yet about that? Somebody said something about and maybe announcing tonight, but I haven't heard anything yet. So I didn't know if you'd heard anything definitive on that.
I haven't heard anything yet, but a lot of those names you mentioned, I also agree with. I don't agree with Jeff Scott. We talked about this. We had a question a couple of weeks ago about what coach would leave first. We do believe that it would be an offensive coordinator coach that would leave first, but I don't think they would leave to an in-conference rival. That just doesn't make very much sense. And Florida State has just got a lot of problems other than X's and O's. Yeah. A lot of I saw somebody say Jim and Joe's problems instead of X's and O's. And Florida State paid a lot of money to get Taggart, which is crazy. They paid $3 million to Oregon to buy him out. They also paid $1.3 million to South Florida to buy out what was remaining of his buyout from Oregon. And then they turn around and they get a $20 million donation from boosters. They claim was not to buy him out, but then go ahead and buy him out for $18 million. So we know that $20 million was we know exactly what that was for, and that was to buy him out. But to me, really the front runner is Mark Stoops. He's shown that he's already coached at Florida State as a defensive coordinator from 2010 to 2012. He's shown that he can do well in the SEC East under Kentucky. And I think he's definitely a name to kind of get him by. His buyout is only $2 million, so it's not that big of a deal, since considering they've already paid so much. I really don't see someone like a PJ Fleck joining them. He's just getting something started over in Minnesota. He doesn't have a lot of experience in the South. And so he's had a lot of his experience in Michigan and Minnesota up north, Dave Clawson's name's been thrown around there from Wake Forest. He's obviously built up Wake Forest to 4 straight bowl games and now only a 1-loss team this year. I like another guy, Matt Campbell over in Iowa State. He hasn't, had a 10-win season or anything, but he's had 2 8-5 seasons, and the NFL scouts seem to like him as far as coaching scouts. So I'm interested to see, but I think Stoops, to me, I would probably pick him just because of that history there. He understands that Florida State dynamic, and he's kind of proven himself a little bit in Kentucky. And a lot of people are saying they just don't care who goes to FSU as long as Clemson continues to destroy them.
I heard a lot of people kind of talking online and on the radio that Stoops would be a good hire. So yeah, I don't think that would be a bad hire for them at all. I believe I gave him a lifetime contract. If you go back to our top 5 list back in the day for his beating South Carolina 5 years in a row, obviously blew that this year. So, I guess he can move to Florida State now that his work's done at Kentucky.